As a parent, one holds the responsibility to protect their children, support them in all aspects, discipline them when the time comes, and overall be someone who they can confide in. However, there have been countless parents who have misunderstood their parental role and have done heinous crimes against their children. Craig Andrew Merritt of Australia, who on Father's Day in 2001 suffocated his 3 children, aged 6 years, 11 months, and 11 weeks. Kathleen Folbig of Australia, who over a 10-year period cold-bloodedly murdered her 4 infant children, each time blaming sudden infant death syndrome. Megan Huntsman of Utah, who killed all her 6 children shortly after she gave birth to them, on different occasions at her house, and stored their bodies in her garage. What becomes more terrifying about this, though, is when we hear something like this happening close to home. John Bemmer of North Bergen, who in January of 1941 brutally killed his 2 sons around 87th Street. John Bemmer was born in 1901 in Germany and came to America when he was just a boy. As the years passed by and he matured, he came to own a knitting mill in the town of Guttenberg. In 1932, he met his wife, and shortly after, they married. On September 1939, though, everything started to change. He was committed to the New Jersey Hospital for the Insane at Greystone Park. There, he was diagnosed with manic depressive psychosis, an extremely dangerous form of insanity. A month later, he was transferred to the medical center in Jersey City. However, he was discharged just 6 weeks later. Despite his condition, he seemed like an ordinary guy to write about everyone. He was always described as quiet, mild-mannered, and sober. His wife even considered him as a model husband. On January 1941, the true nightmare began. It was a few months after Pearl Harbor, and America had just confirmed their part in the war. This concerned John in a great manner. On top of this, he became deeply concerned about his health. He believed his condition might be inherited by his 2 sons, Robert, who was 2 years old, and John, who was 6. On the night of January the 11th, John played cards with his family. After that, he bathed his 2 sons and put them to bed. The following morning, around 6:30 a.m., Emma, his wife, was awakened by painful whimpering coming from the children's bedroom. Without a thought, she went over and found little Robert inside his crib, drenched in blood. Wrapping Robert quickly, she went downstairs, passing John Jr., who appeared to be peacefully on his bed with blankets covering him. When she got to the kitchen, she found John lying across the combined sink and washtub with his face in the kitchen range, gas on, blanket covering him, apparently trying to commit suicide. After she realized what had just happened, she tried to get a hold of her psychiatrist. With no hope, she ran to the neighbor, Louis Larson's house, to contact the police and North Hudson Hospital. When the police arrived, they searched the house. They pulled the blankets off John and found him with a short handle axe buried in the back of his head. He was still breathing. Both boys were rushed quickly to the hospital, where emergency operations were undertaken. Unfortunately, Robert died at 8:30 a.m. and John at 10:30 a.m. Shortly after the police arrived at the house, John was taken to North Hudson Hospital. The hospital attendants requested he should be handcuffed to his bed since they feared he would cause more harm. However, according to police, he was completely subdued. Moments later, Chief John Simmons arrived with 2 other officers to start the investigation. John quickly confessed to this guilt and signed confessing his actions. On January the 13th, he was held without bail for action by the grand jury on a charge of murder of his 2 sons, John and Robert, and a charge of attempted suicide. 2 days after the court trial, the 2 boys were buried at Mack Place Cemetery in North Bergen after a mass at St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church in West New York. Strangely enough, though, Mrs. Bemmer remained calm throughout the whole time and showed no bitterness against her husband. Not only this, but a day after the murder, she began tidying up her own home and quickly made preparations to carry on her husband's business. According to police, she wanted to attempt to carry on the business so she could do everything possible to support her husband. What's most strange of all of this is how confused this catastrophe left everyone. After questioning Mrs. Bemmer and her mother, Matilda Luthi, The police realized there had been no warning whatsoever that could make anyone around John aware of what could happen. According to the police, they themselves were unable to find any evidence that would help them find out why John committed the murders. Even the police were left bewildered and astonished.